hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, fellow tech nerds and real estate professionals alike. My name is Jake Youngs, and I am joined by our fearless commander-in-chief, Mr. Tech Jeffrey Raskin over here. This guy is the leader in the real estate tech world, as we all know. So we're back with episode 4 of the Tech 4 podcast, and kind of continuing on with our Paperless Office series that we've been doing for the last week. We are now talking about professional emails, and we're also maybe going to see a little bit of a tangent from Jeff on why you do not go with Cox emails for your professional email services.
I mentioned that last time.
Yes. Anyway, Jeff, feel free to take it away whenever you're ready.
Yeah, so, thank you, Jake. If you've taken my email class before, you know that there's 3 basic types of emails. I'm not going to bore you with this, but we basically have a POP account, we have an IMAP account, and then we have either an Exchange server or a Google Suite, as it used to be known, type of account, a professional email account, which we'll get into. POP is the absolute worst emails of all emails out there. And this is where your ISPs come in. And even though a lot of them have got rid of it, ISP meaning the Internet Service Provider, Cox or CenturyLink, wherever you are in the country, those are the main 2 here. And they used to give you an email. It used to be jeff@cox.net or jake@centurylink.net. And they used to use these things called POP emails.
Extra value add.
It's the extra, yes, and then some. So bottom line is, it did nothing for you. It wouldn't sync your calendars. It wouldn't sync your contacts. It was just a horrible email system. And then even though both of those ISPs' emails have jumped to an IMAP, which is at least on kind of the same page as Gmail or Yahoo and things like that, the problem is that they are just horrible free emails, as most free emails are, because they are not basically getting any money out of it. So they're not going to support it. They're not going to contact you if you're having an issue. You aren't going to be able to contact them. And that's a problem with especially the Cox emails, which, by the way, Cox were getting so many questions about their emails that are not working. They actually said, hey, guess what we're going to do? We're going to go ahead and we're going to transfer it over to Yahoo, which is even worse because they are the #1 hacked email in the world.
Well, you know what they say about Yahoo. You always have other options, right?
And then some. Yes.
That's what Yahoo stands for.
You always have other options. And yet people seem to be okay with this until they're not. And they give me a call, and they give you a call, and they go, hey, by the way, I really hate Cox email, and you want to know what I hate even worse? Yahoo. And so that's kind of what it comes down to. So
rightfully so.
Rightfully so. Very rightfully so. You have other options. So I'm going to tell you, get a professional email. I'm just going to come out, blunt, say it. Go get a professional email, everybody. And there's so many reasons why, which that's what we're going to be talking about.
Well, I think the first major question that needs to be answered, Jeff, is we know Google, Yahoo, Outlook, all the different options that are out there. These companies provide personal emails and corporate emails. What exactly do you define as a professional email?
It is a beautiful question. Let's go back to what the majority of us agents have out there, and that's going to be Gmail. The majority of agents do have Gmail. Now, let's talk about this for a second. First thing is, Gmail is a beautiful system, kind of. It's free, my favorite 4-letter F word,
yes.
So we're going to go there. The problem with this is several things. So, number 1, who are you promoting when you have a Gmail account?
Google.
And by the way, they're already almost $1 trillion company, so they don't need any more advertisements, but that's what you're doing. Every time you say gmail.com, you're advertising Google, and you're just making it better for them, but okay. Here's the bigger issue with Gmail, is that the email that you put on your card and your business sign and things like that, this is what I see. Now, if it was just jeffraskin@gmail.com, jakeyoungs@gmail.com, kind of okay. You're still promoting Gmail. But the problem is that because it's been around for a long time and there's other Jeff Raskins in the world and there's other Jakes in the world, there's a good chance that you are not going to get that email address anymore. It's going to say, hey, by the way, would you like, Jake Young's 1722s at gmail.com? And some people go, yes, let me take that. I don't know about you, but that just looks so unprofessional.
Yes.
Or, even better, Jake, I love this one, right, is people just use their personal email that they've always had. So
Which is not even an address that's related to real estate either.
Let's see.
A lot of the time.
Let's go take a business card. And the business card looks like this. This is Susan Johnson, professional realtor, ABR, ePro, CRS, all these different acronyms and certifications and designations and, top performing realtor, all this other good stuff. And you go down below.
Blondie@gmail.com.
Well, it gets even better. It's like hotchick6969 at gmail.com. Exactly my point. It is the most unprofessional email.
I thought you were trying to keep this PG.
Well, okay. I said it was going to be a little bit R in there. So the point is, it is the most unprofessional email of all times. Now, if you want to send that out to your friends, that is great. We're talking about a professional business. I mean, could you imagine walking into a business, Fry's, Best Buy, you name it, and you go, can I speak to the manager? And yes, and let me give you my business card in case you have any issues. And literally it says...
Fries@gmail.com.
Exactly. I mean, you would all do exactly that. You would laugh. You would say this is the most unprofessional thing. But what happens to the most of the agents? We use this unprofessional email. Is that fair?
Yep.
Okay.
Very fair.
That's what I mean by an unprofessional email compared to a professional email. Now, a lot of people will say, well, Jeff, I have a professional email because I happen to hang my license with ABC Realty. Okay? So now I get...
Oh, hang on. Pause right there for 1 second. Never, ever, ever use the email that your brokerage gives you for one simple reason. If you leave and you have to go somewhere else and you've been with this brokerage for 15 or 20 years and all of a sudden your email address changes, do you know how many people you have to notify that your email address has just changed? Not to mention you've got to reprint all of your business cards. And what if your brokerage email was a proprietary system to where they won't even let you get access to it the second you walk out the door? Oh crap, all of my contacts were in that email. What am I going to do? I will never ever tell anybody to use their brokerage email address unless it's a pass-through. Then it's a maybe. But anyways, there's my tangent on that one.
Which, by the way, you stole the words right out of my mouth, but here's the thing. They will cut you off like a minute afterwards. I cannot tell you, Jake, how many people have literally called me and say, Jeff, I just severed from my broker. I'm like, okay, and I already know the questions to ask. And before I say anything, they go, I just want to let you know, they cut me off as soon as I severed, and I can't get any of my emails, my contacts, my calendar, and all that other good stuff. And by the way, because I'm brutally honest, I know you're brutally honest, and in class, I said when I was doing a class for a brokerage, I go, never, ever, ever use a brokerage email. And guess what they did? They go, you'll never teach her again because you're telling our agents not to use our brokerage email. My goal is, basically just to let the agents know that if they do use their brokerage email and you leave, and by the way, there's a really good chance you're going to leave sooner or later.
Especially if they're brand new, they're probably going to be moving on within 6 months.
And that's what it comes down to. You're screwed, everybody. Like all the business cards, all everything, you're screwed. So let's go back to that professional email that brands you, and you, and nobody else. And no matter where you hang your license, you can move as many times as you want, but that email is always going to follow you.
Yeah.
That's what I consider a professional email.
Love that example.
Okay.
So where do you want to go with this?
So there's there's many places to go get professional emails, obviously, out there. I don't have a coupon code for one. I don't get any brownie points for any of this. But sooner or later, we're going to have to talk about companies out there that actually do this. I consider there are two major companies out there. There's either a Microsoft Exchange server professional email, and then Google also has a professional domain and then email that you can get along with it.
What would be known as the Google G Suite on the corporate side.
Correct. And so I used to actually say go directly to GoDaddy. And once again, not to promote GoDaddy. I know, not to, because I don't work for them. I don't do any of this. But the only thing that I will say is GoDaddy does sell the Microsoft Exchange server emails along with the domain, although the domain has nothing to do with Microsoft. And then when they do that, the only thing I will say is that they will give you, I'm going to say for the most part, English-speaking tech support help 24/7, but they can also get a little bit spendy. So what I'm going to tell you to do...
And they are headquartered right here in Scottsdale, too.
They are. So they're here in Arizona, so keep the economy local. But the other way to do it, which I'm going to say, if you're transferring from a GoDaddy to what I'm going to say Microsoft, I'm going to say it is a little bit difficult, so don't try this necessarily on your own. It can be dangerous. No, it's not, but it can be a little bit tricky.
Don't push the red button.
Exactly. But if you go directly to Microsoft, actually, and I'm not pitching Microsoft products, but I'm saying the email address that they offer. So what you can do is you can actually go get your own domain. And you can buy that for a penny through GoDaddy, right?
Yeah.
So go get your own domain. And really quick on domains, here's what I'm going to recommend. Keep it short and easy to spell.
Usually, depending on your name is not a bad domain. So like jeffr.com or raskinhomes.com like Jeff has. Any of the above are a good option. Something simple.
So,
or I could say Young's Homes, Young's Realtor, or whatever.
So let's talk about that for a second, because there's one more caveat to that, right? If you ever are thinking about expanding your business and eventually selling your business, actually, I might recommend that you don't use your last name, everybody. Oh, by the way, other caveat there, if you're a woman and you get a divorce, which, by the way, I have seen many, many, many a times. I know, I'll never forget this lady. She goes, Jeff, what email address should I get? And her name was Susan Smith. And I go get smithhomes.com. She did it. Sure enough, she got a divorce. And she goes, Jeff, am I stuck with the Smith? Because I got married again. Like,
or vice versa. If you get married, you're single while you buy your domain.
Which is obviously goes both ways. So I'm going to recommend you get something, if it's available. It's going to be a little bit hard, but something that brands you as an agent, that shows that you are in the real estate field. And then if you want to, you can sell it, or you can do whatever you want there. Okay?
And even sometimes you can turn around and sell the domain itself for a pretty penny.
Which is another. And by the way, these domains are getting harder and harder to get, and especially if you're talking about Scottsdale Homes. I mean, if somebody really wanted to sell that right now, we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars, because they're really hard to get anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
I will say one other option to buy domains. I don't know how it would work necessarily with email, but Wix is a great resource to go and buy domains from, because the beautiful thing about Wix is, I know GoDaddy kind of supports this as well,
right,
but you can go to Wix and you can get the jakeyoungs.co, .io, .net, .com, all of that bundled up into one, and just have it all redirect to your personal website, your personal email, just in case something happens, like somebody mistypes your web address or whatever the case may be.
You know, you bring up a really good point on that one. I would have all of the different suffixes in general, because I get this question as well. Gosh, it brings up a lot of really good things. Should I get a .com? Should I get a .realtor? Should I get a there's a lot of something something afterwards. A .co, right? Company, things like that.
So we're past the point where everything has to be .com. The other suffixes are now the more trendy options to go with.
And they are, and they're really cool. You could actually, there's a lot of them out there. Oh my gosh, they have everything. .love, fun. So they have a lot of things out there, I guess.
Real quick though, I just want to give you guys one little caveat. And full disclosure, I've got one of the .realtor emails from the NAR. I love the .realtor email system. It's so easy to buy into, and it's so easy to maintain, so easy to hook into a website, and I get a huge discount on the Google G Suite through it as well. The one problem, the one gripe that I have with it is the outdated websites that will not accept an email unless it has .com on the end of it.
Yeah.
They're rare, but there are still a large, annoyingly large number of websites that don't accept anything unless it's .com, .net, or .org.
Which brings up the point that I really want to talk about.
Okay.
Get .com. I mean, I'm going to throw it out there. You know, I get it, .net, whatever, right? People are used to .com. They know it. It's just something that's integrated into our brains now. Get a .com, everybody. Really, that's going to be my suggestion. I don't know. What do you think?
I would also agree with that. I mean, it depends on yourself and your personal preferences. I mean, .com is more common. And here's the thing about having the .com is if you have a .com, you're probably more likely to get spam or something like that.
Fair.
Just because it's way easier to find. The one thing that I will say, another caveat with the .realtor email or anything else other than .com, .net, or .org is probably one time out of 15 or 20. I know it's still fairly low, but it happens enough. I give my email to somebody, and I say jake@jakeyoungs.realtor, and the person says jakeyoungs.realtor.com. No, it's like, no, it's just .realtor, that's it. So there is a great deal of confusion about that, and probably will be for the next, I want to say 5 or 10 years until something like this becomes a lot more mainstream.
Correct.
But even so, we won't see a major change in that until we start seeing changes with Google and Outlook down the road.
So, with that being said, go get a domain first. That's the first thing you need to do. And then, based on that, what you're going to do is you're going to feed in the prefix of whatever you want. So let me give you an example, right? So let's say we start this, we buy this domain called techferrari.com, right? By the way, it's already been taken. You can't buy it anymore. But so we get this, and the best part of it all is that now we can create an email with that domain. Once you own the domain, now you also have the ability to own the email. Like you can't have somebody steal an email if you own the domain. It doesn't make sense, right? They go hand in hand. So what's going to happen is that now we can get Jeff at techferrari.com. We can get Jake at techferrari.com. But the best part of this all, Jake, is that they allow you to get what's called aliases. And by the way, these are at no extra charge. And it can make your organization go from this one-man shop, if that's what you're doing out there in real estate, to this huge company, or at least it looks like it, because now you can add as many prefixes as you want. So the at techferrari.com will always remain the same, but it's what you put in front of it. So in other words, if I have Jeff at techferrari.com, right, people are going to do it. But let's say, now Jeff is fairly easy to spell, but let's say that I had a name that was a little bit harder, like Robbie. Now you're like, well, no, what's wrong with Robbie?
I-E-R-Y, or yeah.
E-Y-Y, what, you know, I. So which one is just an I, right? And that's the problem, everybody, because if you don't hit that right on the head with those exact letters, guess what? You ain't getting your email. And so here's the best thing with the aliases. You can put whatever spelling you want, and it's still going to get to you. So in other words, I can go ahead and do Robbie with an IE. That's the real way, right? And then I can put in these aliases, Robbie with a Y, Robbie with just an I, and as many as they want. But then you can go and once again make yourself look like this big organization. I could say offers at techferrari.com. I can say homes at, home without an S at. I can do accounting at, paperwork at. You can do whatever you want at, and then that domain. And like I said, it's so beautiful. It makes you look like this huge organization where really it's not. It's going to your original email.
Yeah, Jeff is a huge nerd if you guys can't tell.
You know what? I just went in yesterday to add a couple of more. I have to tell you, this is no joke. I'm at 130 aliases right now.
Can you name all of them?
No, I can't. I can't. But I can look at them, and pretty much no matter what you put in front of Tech Ferrari, for the most part, it's going to go to me. And to be, just to be brutally honest, I do have other staff members working for me. But bottom line is, they see everything. Oh, that's the other thing. It goes to whomever I want. So in other words, I can have my VAs, my virtual assistants, or my office or whatever. They can see my emails. And then when we get into this a little bit more, you'll see that they not only can see my emails, they can also see my calendar and my contacts. And it gets to the point, I guess, jumping right into it, they can all actually manipulate my calendar. And actually, that's what they do. I don't even know what I'm doing tomorrow, but my assistants do. And then I look at my phone or my computer or any other device,
Yikes.
and it's there. I know, a little bit crazy. But let's go back into email. So that's my thought process is, so what is a professional email? It's an email that brands you and nobody else, that's going to follow you no matter what. So it's not going to go back to this organization like the brokerage or things like that. And then, once again, it's where I can add these different aliases where I can, once again, make myself look like this big organization. And then one last thing, you're like, well, Jeff, what about my Cox email that I've had for 50 years? Or what about my Gmail that you told me not to use anymore? Well, here's the best part of it all, Jake. You can simply forward any one of those emails to that professional one, and guess what?
Yeah.
No harm, no foul. You don't need to change your business card. You don't need to change your sign writers. You don't need to change anything. It will just forward to that professional email, but then when you email back, then it will come from that professional email, and they're like, wow, this looks really professional.
You can always do a pass-through, or if you've got that email that you've been storing emails in for the last 50 years, number one, I applaud you. That's a huge feat right there.
AOL?
Yeah.
I know people who use that. Big producers.
That's still around?
Yeah, oh, you don't even know.
Oh, gosh.
I know.
I was going to say, the other thing that you can do is whenever you're forwarding emails onto your old email address, you can always just blind carbon copy yourself in on the email. Nobody ever knows it's there.
Correct.
Except for you.
BCC is wonderful. Love that, right? Mm-hmm. So, anyways, professional email, great way to go. Forward it through. I will say one thing. There's one caveat to that. The only email system in the world that I know of that doesn't forward, are you ready for this one? Take a guess which one it is.
Cox.
No, actually, Cox actually will allow you to forward. Now, I don't know about Yahoo. I think Yahoo actually does.
Yeah, Yahoo
but
does.
Second guess.
AOL?
It is.
Oh,
It
really?
is. Yeah, I'm not joking. AOL does not want you leaving AOL, everybody, right? So when you got mail, it literally wants you to stick with them forever. So in other words, you can't forward an AOL email address.
Well, what if I reply? What if I reply to the email to forward it off to? Oh, wait, I get what you mean.
Yeah. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, you can manually forward it, obviously, but I'm talking about the pass-through to automatically go through. Which, by the way, just to be clear, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about so you could go into the systems and say, hey, every time I get an email through my Gmail, simply forward it to this new professional email, and then you can go from there. That's what I mean by, okay.
I get you now. I thought you were talking about manually forwarding.
No, oh God, no.
Man.
No.
Who doesn't support that?
No. Yeah, I definitely don't. So,
I mean,
cool.
It wouldn't surprise me if Cox didn't, but yeah, that's cool.
Cox does allow you to do that, believe it or not. Yahoo, I actually need to double check on that, especially since it took over for the Cox emails. So I'll look into that again.
I've got a Yahoo account.
Okay, so you know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah.
Yeah, barely use it, but I've got a Yahoo account.
So let's talk about, I think that's huge in of itself, but let's talk about one other thing, and that's the syncing of your calendars and your contacts. Okay?
Yes.
So let's talk about Gmail, and then their contacts and their calendar. The thing that I absolutely, oh my gosh, where do I even go with it? There's so much to talk about here. So first thing is, with the web-based version of Gmail, and if I want to make a calendar event, I love it that you can't go directly from your email into creating an event. You need to separately create that event in Gmail. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Whereas with a desktop-based version, I guess I don't want to get too much into online and desktop-based versions such as web-based Gmail versus desktop-based version of Outlook or Mac Mail. But I can literally just drag and drop an email directly into my calendar, and it will literally sync the whole email so that when I look at it on my phone, which you can do, which I'm going to go into more detail about that one because it syncs everything in the cloud there, kind of to piggyback off of our last podcast that we did. And so now I can go ahead and do that, and everything is right there. And I can do that with contacts as well. I can literally drag and drop a contact from the email, and it automatically puts in the name and the email address. And now I could go ahead and put in, obviously, the phone number and other things. You can put in attachments, and it is just beautiful. And once again, all of this is platform agnostic. So in other words, I don't care. I get it on my native app through my iPhone, through the iCal and the iContact, and with your Google device as well. You can do it natively. You don't have to go into the Outlook app or the Google app.
So I've actually got kind of an interesting question I want to bring up
Shoot.
for you. This one's probably going to dive a little bit more into email software and different applications. And I ask you the question because I've got my personal choice answer to it. But let's say I am John Doe Realtor, and I've got 6 different email addresses that I've created throughout the phase of my career. I didn't know aliases were a thing, so I had to make johndoerealtor@gmail.com, John Doe 1 Realtor at gmail.com, John Doe Contracts at gmail.com. What would you suggest as far as consolidating this? And gosh, Jeff, is there a way that I can view all of my email accounts in one place at one time?
I'm glad you asked.
Here we go, guys. This is where it gets good.
Here we go. Okay. Not everybody is going to like this answer, but I think if I explain the background and why I like my systems, whether you agree or not, I think that you can at least understand my reasoning here. So hear me out on this one. I am actually going to be, and I do use a system that came out probably, I don't know, 30 years ago, something like that. It happens to be called the desktop version of Outlook, which, by the way, you can use Outlook on a Mac or PC, just to let you know.
100%.
And people go, well, Jeff, oh my gosh, that is so antiquated. It came out. You should go with the new thing, which is gmail.com. And yeah, you know, already know my answer on that one. So why do I use that platform compared to all the other platforms out there? And I first want to start off with this. Let's go over the difference between a web-based platform compared to a desktop-based platform. I think that's the first thing we need to discuss.
That's a great point.
So, web-based platform is going to be Outlook.com, Gmail.com, anything.com. If there's a .com behind it and you need internet connectivity, that's going to be called the web-based version of the platform. Okay.
Okay.
With the desktop-based version, now I'm going to go and I'm going to download the actual program. I'm going to call it a legacy program. And what it allows me to do...
Outlook, it definitely is.
It definitely is, right? From a long time ago, right? But it allows me to download it on my computer. So in other words, I can view my emails, I can view my calendar, I can view my contacts and everything in between with or without internet connectivity. Now, you aren't sending out emails without internet. You aren't getting your emails without... You aren't syncing your calendar and your contacts to the cloud without, of course, internet connectivity. But at least I can view it, which if you have everything in gmail.com or yahoo.com or AOL.com, you can't see anything. Is that a fair point?
Yes.
Okay, that's going to be number one. But the thing that I really like about Outlook, and there's about 100 things, but I'm going to go over the main ones, right? Otherwise, this is going to be a really long podcast. But the things that I really like about it is that Outlook, the program, is not an email.
Right.
It's a program that allows me to get any email I want. So I don't care whether you have that AOL, or you have that Gmail, or even if you have that Cox or Yahoo email.
It's unfortunate, but anyways.
It is. But even if you do have it, I can get all of my emails in one place. And it's going to be a separated inbox, going to be a separated outbox, going to be a separated spam box. and so forth and so on. And I absolutely love that. So in other words, I don't have to go to gmail.com to get my Gmail and yahoo.com to get my Yahoo and to go to AOL. I don't need to do that. You would have to go to 3 different places where I only have to go to one place where I could see all my emails in one platform. Okay?
That's a great point.
So the second point to this is that calendar. I'm going to go back to that because that's really big with me. I'm all about efficiency, right? That is my number one thing. I hate taking more time doing things when you really don't need to do that. That calendar is making a calendar event is a great example of this. So once again, with Outlook, the program, I can take my email and I can literally, now if you have a touch screen, right, I can literally just take my finger and drag and drop it up to the little, I know, I'm a big on touch screens, right? But I can drag and drop up to the calendar icon and it will literally make me a calendar event. And it will bring over the whole body of the email so that it does sync to the cloud, which we'll get into that in a little bit. Then on my iPhone or whatever, I can see all of the chain, the whole thread throughout. Same thing with the contact, as I just mentioned, so I'm repeating myself. Yeah. Literally drag and drop it over, which, by the way, is not even possible in any web-based email. Any web-based email platform.
So you got to have a whole different tab open for that.
That's right.
If you can even do it.
Well, you can. That's the thing. I could have a different tab, right? You could have tab Gmail and then tab Google Calendar.
That's true.
But you still can't drag and drop, whereas I can. Love Outlook. It's wonderful.
That's a great point.
So those are my reasons for having that. And then the last point, because then afterwards, because I do want to hear what your fave is.
He knows I'm bursting at the seams over here.
And trust me, I know you are, and I can't wait to hear it. And by the way, you know what? There's no right or wrong answer, right? Whatever works for you works for you.
Absolutely.
I'm just trying to give you pointers of what I've seen that is super efficient. And this is after working with thousands of agents going to their offices, going to their homes, seeing what they're doing. And then when I show them how easy it is, they're like, oh my gosh, that makes life a lot easier. So the last thing that I want to mention to you is that I told you can get any email within the Outlook platform.
Yes.
Okay. But not all of them are going to sync the calendar and the contacts together. So you need to understand that there's a platform. And then there's the email system, in this case an Exchange server or a G Suite, that will now allow you to sync the calendar and the contacts. So an IMAP will not allow you usually to sync the calendars from platform to platform, nor will it allow you to do the contacts from platform to platform. So if you have Gmail, everybody, I just want to let you know, and you're like, well, this is super cool. I can drag and drop it into Outlook, just like Jeff said. Well, that's great and dandy, but it will not go up into the cloud and then go to your iPhone or your Android phone. That is super important because that's the big piece of the puzzle. Whereas if you have your professional email, the Exchange server or G Suite, to be fair, you can now drag and drop it in to there, and then it will sync to all your different device platform agnostically.
Yes, great point.
Cool?
So getting into my solution, if we're talking about platform agnostically here, for me personally, I don't use the drag and drop method that Jeff is using. For me personally, it sticks in my head a lot more if I enter my events manually into a calendar. It helps me remember more of what I'm doing, what's going on, and I get things set up a very specific way. Not saying that his way is wrong or anything. I just prefer doing stuff manually because I remember it better. And
by the way, really quick, I think this is good for our audience, right?
Yeah.
That we're not on the same page on all these different subjects, right? There's a lot of things, right? Like the last podcast, you're like, no, Jeff, like screw OneDrive. I like this better. I think it's great that we get kind of different opinions here to see, because there's no right or wrong way on any of these.
It'd be very boring if we were on the same page.
Extremely boring, right. So actually, I'm glad we're having this conversation.
Okay, perfect. So am I. Anyways, there's 2 pieces of software that I really enjoy using. One I use for email, one I use for my calendar. There's a calendar app that I use. It's called Notion Calendar. I use it on my Mac and I use it on my iPhone. Drives me nuts that they don't have an iPad version of it, and it has a major limitation in that it only supports Google Calendar. So you have to have a Google Calendar account to use it, which for me is not a big deal. I schedule everything through my personal Gmail anyways. It's not the end of the world. I want everything there on one page. So Notion Calendar is my personal favorite app, and it's mostly because I prefer everything that I can get a desktop version of. I'd much rather use it on the desktop instead of having to open up 30 different tabs in my web browser. I've got 30 different apps open on my computer. It's easier to find stuff in my taskbar than it is in my web browser. But anyways, that's a totally separate tangent there. Notion Calendar is my preferred choice for the calendar app, but here's the thing. When it comes to working with emails, my personal favorite email app to use is this app called Spark by Readle. Now, Readle, they're a developer based in Ukraine, and they make a lot of software for Apple devices primarily, but it is supported on PC as well.
They're the ones who made
PDF Expert.
I used to use that all the time on my iPad.
That's how I got started with these guys, is because of PDF Expert.
Got it.
Then I found out that they had Spark a couple of years ago when I was looking at consolidating all my emails into one place. So, I started digging into this thing, and it's like, all right, this is great that I can get my personal emails in here. And probably about, it wasn't too long after I signed on with you at the school, probably about a year and some change ago, I started to get to the point where it's like, all right, I've got all of my emails open, I've got my personal emails in Spark, but I want to keep my business emails separate. And that's the thing is I want a good app where I can keep all of my email accounts, personal and business, in one app, and I can just jump back and forth between my different accounts. So the beautiful thing, the two features that I love about Spark, right? Number one, it sounds so simple, but the email signatures, right? Not every platform will sync. If you have an image for your signature, not all of them will sync from one device to the other. Spark does that, and I've got a different signature set up for each of my accounts on Spark. So I've got my Realtor email set up with my Realtor email signature. I've got my Tech Ferrari email set up with my Tech Ferrari email signature. And here's the other thing, is I can get all of my email accounts brought into this one app. And they have this thing called a unified inbox, which is all of your emails go into one place. Now, here's the real thing that really finally sold me on moving everything into one spot, is getting that... getting those business emails separated from my personal ones, because I want to view both of my personal emails in one inbox, but then I wanted to have my business stuff separate from it. So I had a way to exclude my business emails from my personal emails, so I can look at those separately. I'm not mixing up my real estate emails with my Tech Ferrari emails, or vice versa. I'm getting everything separated the way that I want it to. And to be fair, they do have a calendar built into Spark. It's just not one that I like to use. I prefer using Notion because I like having two separate calendars, and I love the way that Notion lays it out as well. Plus I can, it's a Google Calendar thing, but I can drop all my Zoom links, all my appointments and stuff into Notion Calendar, just open it up on my phone. If I've got my address in there, so the next appointment I'm going to, just open it up, click the address, navigate straight to it. And yeah, I think those are my answers for what I'd like to do.
That's kind of interesting. So what I'm hearing out there from you is that you like to use multiple different platforms to do what I'm doing in all one platform called Outlook. Calendar, contacts, emails, drag and drop, and you're just deciding to be inefficient by using a couple different things.
Sure, yes. But here's one other thing, actually, now you mentioned it with the contacts, that I like about Spark, is whenever I send an email to a brand new address, or an email comes in from an address, it automatically stores that in its database of contacts.
Right.
So I can go from my Tech Ferrari email and send an email to somebody using my Realtor email, and that email address, that contact for the person I'm sending the email to, is just going to exist no matter what email I'm sending it from.
I see. Yeah, that's cool. Look, like I said, and I'm being serious about this, that there is no right or wrong way. It's whatever works for you. Is all we're trying to do is tell you what we are using out there. If you think it would make your life easier, try it out. If you're thinking like my system works, stick with that. right? Now, except for the email, I'm still a big believer on the email thing, having a professional email compared to a non-professional email. That has nothing to do with the system. So that's another thing that I do want to bring up. I want to make sure that people understand that an email and a system are two completely different things.
Correct,
right.
Yes.
So what I'm seeing out there is that people say, oh, well, I have Gmail, so I need to use gmail.com. No, you don't. I have AOL, so I need to use AOL. No, you don't, everybody. An email is separate from the platform. Most people think that just because it's Yahoo, you need to use Yahoo. No, you don't. You can get that in a multitude of platforms. Outlook is just one of them, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of other platforms, Spark, whatever.
Just like Spark, there's
correct.
30, I can think of 30 different apps on the App Store that do the exact same thing Spark does.
Yeah. And so it's just a matter of the look and the feel that you like from the platform that you want to use. So I think that's super important because I truly believe most agents don't understand that concept. I mean, I have people all the time, they're like, well, I use Outlook. And I'm like, okay, but what email do you use? And they go, Outlook. And I'm like, no. Unless they really do have an Outlook, because Outlook does that. But most people do not. I'm like, no, what's your email? They're like, oh, I have Gmail. And I'm like, okay, so what platform? And they're like, well, so people don't understand that just because you have an email, once again, sounding like a broken record, the email and the platform have nothing to do with each other.
That is actually a really, really good point.
I think it's powerful.
One other thought that just popped into my head is kind of related to email, kind of not. Jeff, I'm sure you'll agree with me on this one. When it comes to your computers, your cell phones, your iPads, all those different devices like that, I can't stress how important it is to make sure you're using the same apps on all your devices. You don't want to be using Apple iMail or Apple Mail on your iPad, and then you've got Outlook on your Mac. You don't want to be using Gmail on your iPhone to try and service everything. That's kind of what we're both getting at, is you want to have everything synced on one platform so that no matter where you go, like with Spark, all I've got to do when I get a new device, one username, one password gets all my emails on one device. And it looks exactly the same. And also, to that point as well, you're talking about knowing what we're using and things like that. The thing that I think really got me started with Spark is I was already using PDF Expert, had been using it for several years at that point. So having pieces of software, even the whole Microsoft Office suite's a great example of this. Having pieces of software that feel similar, work similar, do similar things, that's a really huge deal. And that right there, just having similar pieces of software will help speed up your workflow 10 times over.
You know what? I'm really glad you brought that up. This might be going a little bit too much down a rabbit hole on this one, but let's take Microsoft Office really quick, even though we're talking about kind of professional needs. But if you use Office, so once again, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, all this other good stuff. If you use an acronym, most of you know what I'm talking about, where you can go ahead and put in an acronym and then it will spell out the whole word. It's called autocorrect feature if you want to Google that one. And if I put in JR in Word, it will come out with Jeff Raskin. So I'm typing, I just do JR and it will automatically come with Jeff Raskin. I don't need to spell out Jeff Raskin.
What happens if you need to say Junior?
That is a great question. And I'll actually, no, it's actually a really good question because it's happened to me many times, and I'll actually talk about that.
So I've got a solution real quick for Apple devices if you're doing that.
Yeah.
So like I've got NAR set up to automatically translate to National Association of Realtors. Yep. Come to find out, if I type in NAR, translates to National Association, you get the idea. But if I type in NARR and then delete the second R, it leaves it as NAR.
Wow. Okay, so you decide to take that path. I take it a little bit different. If I wanted, because I have the same thing, so if I type in NAR, it's going to come with the National Association of Realtors. It's automatically going to do it. Is what I do, and this little trick is going to not only teach you about this, but anything on there. I use a great feature, a little function called control, and for you it would be command, and it would be, what is it again? I forgot.
On the Mac?
No. I'm joking with you.
Okay.
But it's Z. So if you do Z,
That makes sense,
everybody,
yes.
right, it undoes what you did. So if I do NAR, and I really wanted it NAR, didn't want to spell it out, you do Control Z, Command Z on the Mac, and what it will do is just, it will go back to NAR. But, so great question on that
Mac is a little bit more finicky than that.
Really?
Yeah, it can be a little bit troublesome with doing that kind of stuff.
Okay.
On the iPad or on the iPhone, it's really, really easy, but on the Mac, it's really weird.
I'm glad he corrected me on that one, because obviously I don't know Mac. So, okay, I thought it would be very similar, but I guess not. So, JR, and you want a Junior, because I have this all the time. You just do Control Z, and then it will go back to Junior. So, but the point that I was trying to make to you is that those autocorrect features that I create on my Word product will now translate over to Excel, Outlook, Publisher. So I don't need to keep on doing it for each one. So I love the uniqueness of how they all work together.
Or you can just get an Apple ecosystem and they just sync up all your
I knew
devices.
that was coming. I knew that was coming.
Yeah, and to be fair, like I know you've taught me how to do it on Windows, but man, it's a pain in the rear end on Windows compared to Mac.
There's some things that I've realized that work really well on Windows that don't on Mac, and vice versa. And you know, there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's the ecosystem there, and it's what it is. But I just love my autocorrect feature, everybody. It is the most beautiful thing. Oh, and by the way, it doesn't have to be just a single word. You can literally put out a whole sentence. I put in NAR 9, and it says per NAR Article 9 of the Code of Ethics, and it spells out a whole paragraph if that's what you wanted to do.
Jeff and nobody else within the Realtor ecosystem does this.
and I want to let you know, you remember I said my aliases, I have about 130. I am not exaggerating. With my little autocorrect feature, I have to have like over 200. Now, the only bad news is that you have to remember those acronyms of what they are. And
so actually, we'll get back on track with emails in a second, but I've got a really good system for memorizing what the acronyms are.
Let's hear it.
So just like, you know, for example, with in case you missed it or something like that, and it sounds like you're doing the same with Jeff Raskin Jr., every single time if I'm doing like an entire sentence or a phrase of words, I always do the very first letter of that word, and I make sure that it's capitalized. So when I need to type in Jeffrey Mr. Tech Raskin on a website, I type in JMRT, all caps just like that. Usually, I know it's kind of the default system, but usually if you can remember what the first letter of each word in your phrase is, it's usually an easy way to remember it.
Yeah, and that's a great way to do it. I mean, most of the time, that's what I do. I mean, I have good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So, GM, J, G. I mean, it's pretty easy, and I know that I'm going to get it. And then sometimes, you know, like I have, this is kind of interesting, right? So I have GoDaddy and I have Google Drive. They happen to both be, you know, GD, right? So I'm thinking like, how do I do it? So now I'm used to it so much. I do GoDaddy, I do GDD, because I had to add an extra D in there, and then just some that you just gets ingrained in your head. So I know my own acronyms to an extent. Sometimes I'm like, why didn't I put that in there? And then I type it and I'm like, oh, I did. So sometimes I forget about my acronyms.
Yikes.
I know. But I have a lot of them out there. Okay, so back onto the professional email, the platform, we've already addressed that. We got the difference between the email and the platform. We already know that. What else am I missing?
Gosh, you know, I can't think of anything else as far as professional emails. I mean, we'll have to do a whole separate thing on like business cards and email cards and things like that.
Yeah.
But I would say that's one of the other major things when it comes to your emails is making sure that you've got a really good email signature put together, because you can have a super professional email, you can have the coolest email address around, but if your signature looks like dog doo-doo, then it's just going to kill the entire thing. So you got to remember, people are going to remember the worst aspect of everything, not the best aspect. So I think that's what I would say as far as emails go.
I just thought about one last thing before we take off here.
Do tell.
Make sure that in your signature, and by the way, I'm going to go back to Outlook for a second. I can actually, depending on the email, I can have a separate signature for each email that you mentioned before, but I can also mix and match. So in other words, I can go ahead and right-click on my signature, and it will do any one of the 5 signatures that I have, regardless of the email. So I can either have it matched together, or I can have it. So I just want to mention that. But here's what I really wanted to say. Fellow realtors, real estate professionals out there, whatever you do, if you have a JPEG as a signature, which a lot of people do.
I have that too.
And which, by the way, I love to see your beautiful faces. I love to see your, logo. This is all good.
I know where you're going with this.
I know you know where I'm going with this, because here's the thing. If it's a JPEG and somebody's looking at it on their phone like I do at every red light, everybody, I'm not going to lie, and I want to call you, guess what I'm not able to do?
Can't click on it.
I can't click on it, and it will not dial you. Okay?
You didn't go where I thought you were going to go.
Oh, okay. I thought that was the obvious thing, but what were you thinking?
You said something about profile pictures, and I was thinking realtors and their 30-year-old profile pictures that they haven't updated in so long.
See, you said it. I didn't. I guess I could have gone there as well. Should we talk about updating their photos and not their prom photos from their high school days?
Yeah, we'll save that for another episode.
That'll be another episode.
We'll spare you guys that for right now.
But seriously, everybody, make sure, if you want to put in that JPEG, that's no problem at all. But make sure that you also, even if you just type in your email address separate from the JPEG, people are you got to make it a clickable link. Because if it's not clickable, I'm telling you, people aren't going to call you because they can't remember 7 digits.
Well, what you can do is just open up Siri on your iPhone.
And trust me, I knew you were going to say that, Mr. Tech Jr., but here's the thing. Most people are not going to be like, oh, yeah, hey, Siri. But that clickable phone number is a big thing.
Yeah, that is a very good point.
No.
So I think that's where we better leave it off for this episode. Guys, thank you for joining us. And Jeff, I'll let you take the outro here.
Other than that, everybody, thank you for joining us on these wonderful podcasts that we are sitting here and making to educate all of you. That's our goal, just to educate you, to make you a better realtor, a better real estate professional, and just better at technology, because most of us were not born with a silver iPad in our mouth. So with that being said, have a great rest of your week, and we will see you next week. Thank you very much.
That iPad in the mouth sounds painful.
I know.